You're watching the spirit of Hampton Roads. 13 News at 5 starts right now.
A deadly helicopter crash in Iraq takes the lives of 31 U.S. servicemen. I'm Sandra Parker. Tonight, the terrible accident, where the soldiers were stationed, and what may have caused the crash.
Then masked gunmen burst into a local supermarket. Moments later, shots are fired. I'm Regina Mobley. Tonight, learn what went down inside the store, who was hit, and what the bad guys made off.
And this attorney and former mayor is accused of forcing a client to pay for legal fees with sex. Tonight, 13 News investigates new accusations and why the former mayor says the police have got it all wrong.
It is Wednesday night, and our big story on 13 News, the deadliest day for the military since the war in Iraq began.
A transport helicopter carrying 30 Marines and a Navy sailor crashed about 200 miles west of Baghdad near the town of Wvec. All 31 aboard were killed when a CH-53E Super Stallion, like this one, went down in the desert during bad weather. Tonight, as investigators look into the cause of the crash, the nation mourns the enormous loss of life. 13 News military reporter Mike Gooding's been following this big story all day. And Mike, first off, do we know where the Marines were based?
We do, Sandra and Regina. The aircraft itself and its 4 crew members were from the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing in San Diego, and the 26 Marine passengers were from the 1st Marine Division based at Camp Pendleton, California. And the military now says there was also 1 Navy sailor aboard, also assigned to the 1st Marine Division. The CH-53E Super Stallion crash killed 30 Marines and 1 sailor, making this the deadliest incident involving a U.S. military helicopter in the 22-month-old Iraq War. The crash occurred around 1:20 a.m. in the desert 220 miles west of Baghdad near the town of Wvec, as the helo conducted what the Marines described as security and stabilization operations. A senior administration official said there was bad weather at the time. Satellite imagery showed a sandstorm in the vicinity, and the military said there was no evidence of enemy fire.
While we mourn the loss of these heroes, we will honor their sacrifice by continuing our mission to bring democracy to the people of Iraq.
The CH-53E Super Stallion dates back to the early 80s and is made by Sikorsky Aircraft Corporation of Stratford, Connecticut. The CH-53 is a mainstay of the Marine Corps for ferrying equipment and troops in western Iraq. The aircraft in its earliest models dates back to the early 60s. It is due eventually to be retired and replaced by the V-22 Osprey. Of the 30 helicopter crashes thus far in the Iraq War, 20 have been as a result of hostile fire. This is the first one to involve a 53. President Bush expressed sorrow at the loss of U.S. Marines and said he knows Americans will find the news discouraging.
I know that it is being investigated by the Defense Department, and obviously any time we lose life, it is a sad moment.
The president went on to say, quote, "We value life and we weep and mourn when soldiers lose their life, but it is the long-term objective that is vital, and that is to spread freedom." Live in the newsroom, Mike Gooding, 13 News.
We have a 13 News update on yesterday's Navy helicopter crash off the coast of Virginia Beach. All 8 Navy crew members and a 9th Coast Guard rescuer have been released from Navy Medical Center Portsmouth. The MH-53E Sea Dragon crashed during a routine training mission about 30 miles east of Oceana. All on board sustained non-life-threatening injuries, mainly bumps and bruises. The cause of the crash is under investigation. Coming up at 5:30, we'll hear from the crew's commanding officer and how all of the safety training paid off.
Also tonight, a developing story out of southern Chesapeake. That is where 8 people were hurt in a fire at the St. Bride's Correctional Facility. 2 of those people are in critical condition. These are pictures from Sky 13, which was over the scene this afternoon. The fire broke out at a part of the complex that is under construction. Let's get the latest on that investigation. 13 News reporter Jessica Chang joins us live from Chesapeake. And Jessica, what have you found out?
We found out, Sandra, that the cause of the explosion was a combination of a propane leak and someone igniting a torch. Now, to give you an idea of how powerful this blast was, it blew a hole the size of about our live truck through a cinder block wall. It was a blast so strong it blew someone clear across the room.
There was a shock wave that went through the building. There was some, we call it blast damage to the ceiling area. There was some lingering fire. We were able to extinguish that pretty quickly.
The fire department spokesperson says the explosion happened while construction workers were soldering pipes in the kitchen of a new prison being built next to St. Bride's Correctional Center. One of the workers ignited a torch, not realizing a propane supply pipe was uncapped, allowing the gas to leak. 6 construction workers were taken to the hospital for their burns. 2 inmates working on maintenance and cleaning in a nearby room were also burned. The Department of Corrections spokesperson says the explosion happened in a completely separate area where inmates are kept. But still, this type of fire had emergency crews initially worried.
There's always a concern whenever we have a fire in what we call a high-capacity building, a school, a nursing home, a hospital, a correctional facility. You have a lot of people within confined areas, and certainly we're going to respond with an adequate response. A lot of equipment, a lot of people.
Again, there were a total of 8 people hurt. The most critically injured has been admitted to the Burn Trauma Center at Sentara Norfolk General. Out of the 6 construction workers who were hurt, it's unsure who they work for, some for the Department of Corrections, some for different subcontractors. The 2 inmates who were injured were not injured very seriously and are likely back in the prison tonight. Reporting live in Chesapeake, Jessica Chang, 13 News.
We also have the latest information on a dangerous and daring robbery on the peninsula. 13 News was on the scene last night as police were investigating the robbery at the Food Lion on Nickerson Boulevard. Police say 2 men demanded money from the clerk when she couldn't open the register. The gunman opened fire, hitting 2 workers. 13 News Peninsula Bureau Chief Velma Scave joins us from Hampton. And Velma, the gunmen are still on the run.
That's right, Regina. Police want to get the 2 armed robbers off the street as soon as possible. And Food Lion is increasing the reward money in hopes of making that happen. Instead of the usual up to $1,000 crime line reward for information leading to an arrest, Food Lion is pitching in an additional $5,000.
This was a totally random, senseless act of violence.
I heard the sirens about 8 o'clock, and I didn't know what was going on.
2 armed men with their faces covered came in, demanded money from the cashiers, and told the store's other employees and shoppers to get on the floor. When a cashier had trouble giving them money, shots were fired. 2 employees were wounded. Police say the robbers left the store after another worker took cash from a drawer and gave it to them. A corporate spokesperson for Food Lion says this is the first violent crime anyone can remember happening in the 16 years the store has been on Dickerson Boulevard. Counselors were brought in for the victims and any other store employee or relatives having trouble coping with what happened.
We also know that this is a very traumatic situation, and so we have associates that are impacted by it, the co-workers, the colleagues.
Jeremy Davis didn't work at the store last night. The high school student says he's not going to quit his job, but he's going to try not to work as many nights as a result of the robbery.
Mom's a little worried, but nah, I mean, I like it here. I like the people I work with.
Some regular customers of the store say they're going to keep shopping at their neighborhood store.
It's one of those things, really, you can't change, just hope it don't happen wherever you go.
It's human nature to be concerned, but I'm not scared.
Both of the workers wounded last night during the armed robbery have been treated and released from local hospitals. Anyone with information about the robbers is asked to call Crime Line, that number 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP. Reporting live from Hampton, Velma Scave, 13 News.
Now to new details on a 13 News investigation of a Suffolk attorney accused of trying to trade services for sex. 13 News broke the story of attorney and former mayor Johnny Mizell last night at 5. He is accused of assaulting a client, then later asking her to pay for services with sex. Well, today we're hearing from the attorney's attorney on the matter. 13 News investigator Craig Savali broke this story. And Craig, what more have you found out?
Well, Sandra, it appears that this is just the beginning of this investigation. 13 News has learned today that 2 more alleged victims have come forward to police making similar claims against the former mayor. This as his attorney and members of the public are coming to his defense.
It was a shocking sight for many Suffolk residents watching Johnny Mizell, a respected attorney, former mayor and councilman, being hauled away Tuesday by police.
When I saw it, when I heard about it, I saw it on TV. I said, oh, I belong there. I said, you need that. I said, he ain't that kind of guy.
Sir, I said no.
Mizell turned down a request to talk about the charges on Tuesday, but today his attorney, Andrew Sachs, gave us this statement, quote, Johnny Mizell is an outstanding lawyer, community leader, and citizen. He is absolutely innocent of these charges and denies any wrongdoing. Mizell is accused of groping a 43-year-old client at his Suffolk office last November. Detectives say he also promised to drop his legal fees in return for sex. Sachs says the victim has psychological and emotional problems. Quote, He, Mizell, is the victim of the misguided and twisted accusation of a disturbed client and nothing more. But it appears there is more. Detectives say 2 more alleged victims have come forward making similar claims. Whether the former mayor will face even more charges is still unknown.
So there'll be a lot of people, you think, supporting Mr. Mizell?
Yes, I know it will. I know it will.
Now, I want to make it clear tonight that while more women have come to the police about accusations, none of those complaints has turned into charges at this time. As for Mizell, he remains out on bond. Live in the newsroom tonight, Craig Savali, 13 News.
To Washington now. Besides today's chopper crash, the ongoing violence and elections in Iraq were top of mind for the president today. In a news conference, the president said today, despite ongoing attacks throughout the country, including a suicide bombing in Kirkuk today, that Iraqi people must and will defy terrorists this Sunday and go to the polls.
Millions of Iraqi voters will show their bravery, their love of country, and their desire to live in freedom.
The president also talked about his upcoming State of the Union address and the Social Security situation. You'll see more from the president's news conference tonight at 6:30 on World News Tonight.
The debate is over and the vote is in. The Senate has confirmed Condoleezza Rice as Secretary of State. The vote came down just after noon today. The tally was 85-13 in favor of Rice for the cabinet position. Some Democrats fought that nomination, saying that Rice shares the blame for mistakes and deaths during the war in Iraq. By the way, both of Virginia's senators voted yes for Rice's confirmation. We have much more to tell you about on this very busy Wednesday night on 13 News.
Tonight, we get a look at the evidence from a bust on drug dealing up and down the East Coast. Ahead, the latest on a sting that involves a former Norfolk school principal.
Plus, deadly commuter chaos out west. 2 trains collide. Why police are saying tonight that it is all one man's fault.
There's no fault when it comes to a child's ADD, but how to treat it. This is 13 News medical editor Catherine Barrett. More on a study linking low iron to ADD.
And right now, a couple of light rain showers trying to show up across parts of the viewing area. We're going to talk about some cold readings moving back in, though.
In Hampton Roads, we celebrate a spirit driven by pride in where we live, the work we do, the difference we make. At 13 News, we honor that spirit every day, fighting for what's right by investigating what went wrong, offering hope through information, seeing details that make the difference, taking pride in giving you the most accurate forecast. It's the spirit we honor every day. 13 News, the spirit of Hampton Roads.
As if the Penner's Point project in Portsmouth didn't have enough problems, check out this.
That's right. Sky 13 is showing pictures of a crane that shifted and then it toppled over onto Cleveland Street. That happened around noon. The crane hit a tractor trailer on its way down. Unfortunately, no one was hurt, but that accident is still causing problems in the area. Let's go live to Metro Traffic Center, and Rachel Lupton joins us. Rachel, how are things looking around Penner's Point now?
Sandra, we are seeing some slowdowns and backups at the Midtown Tunnel due to that accident you were just referring to. Traffic's backed up around Bowling Avenue, trying to make your way into Portsmouth. Now, your best bet is an alternate route is the downtown tunnel on 264, and let's see how that's shaping up. We've got a live shot of that, and let's see how that's looking. Not too bad. Slowing a little bit around Campus Stella, so the downtown tunnel, a great alternate route right now. We've got to head into Portsmouth and avoid that area at Penner's Point. Also, major delays at the HRBT heading to the peninsula. Traffic backs up to Granby Street. Rachel Lupton, 13 News.
Topping tonight's 13 News medical report, levels of iron could provide a treatment for inattentive and hyperactive children.
A new study reports an association with low iron levels in ADHD. 13 News medical editor Catherine Barrett joins us with a look at the study, Iron and ADHD.
Wouldn't it be interesting if that could be a treatment, but we don't know yet. Researchers say it's too soon to tell. What they found is a relationship between iron and ADHD, a condition that's hard to find a cause for and can be hard to treat. But they do have an interesting starting point.
At first glance, Sean looks like your typical 12-year-old who does homework and loves video games. But his mother says she knew from when he was just 5 years old he was different.
He's still in the classroom and like to wander around the room.
Sean is impulsive, overactive, and inattentive, all classic signs of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. In a recent study, researchers in France found that iron levels in kids like Sean are lower than children without ADHD.
And what they found was that children with ADHD had half the levels of the non-ADHD children.
In the brain, iron is bound to ferritin. Its levels go down with iron deficiency and increase with iron supplementation. Low ferritin levels in childhood have been reported to affect the development of the central nervous system.
Iron is to some extent tied up with dopamine, which is one of the chemicals in the brain that's thought to be involved in children with ADHD.
In the study, low ferritin levels were associated with more severe ADHD symptoms. The results suggest that low iron stores contribute to ADHD and that kids with the disorder may benefit from iron supplements.
Next step is doing more extensive studies looking at the relationship between iron and ADHD and seeing whether supplementing with iron can indeed improve ADHD-type symptoms.
Dr. Adesman says it's a good idea for all kids to take a multivitamin, and based on this one study, it would be tempting to add iron on top of that to your child's diet, but right now there is no such recommendation. By the way, I found the study in the December issue of the Archives of Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine. Catherine Barrett, 13 News.
Now, your 13 News Weather Lab forecast. Here's Chief Meteorologist Jeff Lawson.
We're going to talk about the official high in just a couple of minutes, but I can tell you unofficially today, I saw 60 degrees on my car thermometer, and I double-checked in Oceana. I wasn't too far from there in Virginia Beach. Officially reported a high of 59 or 60. So certainly a few of you saw much, much milder conditions. Officially, though, we're going to end up only in the lower 50s today. The big news, some cold air moving in, and it is trying to trigger a stray shower. This is live Weather Lab radar. We've seen a couple of very, very light sprinkles at times today. Right now, the last of them are pretty much moving offshore. You can see stretched from just east of the areas there of Kip the Peak and places on down to just about east of Knott's Island and parts of the Outer Banks. So we're going to be taking a look at the forecast starting with tonight, and you can see blustery and cold conditions expected, much, much colder. Maybe an isolated sprinkle in a few spots, but I emphasize the word few. Most of us won't see anything at all. The big news, the wind shifting to northerly 15 to 30 miles per hour, and air temperatures dropping from today's 50s and near 60 back down near 30 degrees, and it will feel like the teens. So a tremendous change in the forecast. Satellite and radar showing a couple of clouds moving through, as we mentioned early. In fact, the clouds are pretty thick at times today. We saw a few of those showers. Now they're not only moving offshore, but they're really shrinking as well. The actual front I was just talking about is still pretty far north and west of us, around Fredericksburg, let's say, and back to Charlottesville and about Bristol in Virginia. That's going to continue to move in here. It'll take another few hours, but it'll move through and really drop the readings. The high today, Norfolk International's readings were non-existent for a while, so this is from an estimate again, but this time it's an estimate on the peninsula, 53 and 36, the highest and lowest you got on the top of the hour today. Normal high 48. Right now, 41 in Hampton, but 51 in Newport News. We have a pretty big swing across the region. Look at Edenton, 61 degrees. South side's at 47, Peninsula 51. Winds out of the north and the northeast at 8 miles per hour. Here's the forecast then going through the overnight. Looking for some partly to mostly cloudy skies this evening. Through the day tomorrow, not a bad forecast, at least in terms of the sky cover, but I don't think you're going to like the readings, especially when you combine it with that cold wind blowing in out of the north, and not much change, unfortunately, on Friday either. So near 30 tonight, blustery and much, much colder. Mostly to maybe even partly sunny at times tomorrow, but very breezy and cold. Highs in the lower 30s, northerly winds 15 to 25. In the 7-day forecast, that big change next couple of days. We try to improve a little over the weekend. There's a slight chance we could see some ice at the beginning of the storm Saturday night. Looks like the best chance of that is in Central Virginia. So a little bit of wetness Sunday, Monday coming up.
Not a good weekend.
No, not at all.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, ahead on 13 News, tragedy turns into action. How the deadly Christmas tsunami is raising questions in Washington about safety from killer waves here in the U.S.
But first, tragedy on the tracks on the West Coast. The death toll is climbing, and this morning's derailment outside L.A. will have the latest on the casualties when 13 News continues.
This weather segment is brought to you by Dodge. Tonight's 13 News Medical Report is sponsored by Wvec Hospital.
A scary sight for any parent. A school bus flipped onto its roof. This happened this morning outside of Tampa, Florida. The bus, loaded with children, overturned in Hernando County, Florida. One child was airlifted to a Tampa hospital. 7 other students and the bus driver were also injured. It's not known tonight why that accident happened. Well, welcome back. The death toll is rising in this morning's deadly train crash in Southern California.
10 people are confirmed dead. The crash of 2 Metrolink trains happened in the Los Angeles suburb of Glendale. Now police say a suicidal man who was driving an SUV is to blame for the deadly crash. 13 News reporter Carla Wall has the latest from L.A.
From the air, the mangled wreckage looks like a toy train, but up close, the devastation is all too real. And police say it was caused by a 26-year-old man who purposefully parked his SUV on the tracks because he wanted to commit suicide, but at the last moment changed his mind.
Exited the vehicle and stood by as the southbound Metrolink train struck his vehicle.
The southbound commuter train derailed, hitting a parked freight locomotive, then crashed into a northbound commuter train. Passengers say it was though a bomb went off.
It felt like the train jumped the tracks, and then all of a sudden we hit. I fell forward. I hit my head on this partition that's up there and then got a gash on my leg.
Next thing you know, the train flipped and went on its side, and we just got out as quick as we could.
Those who could pulled the injured from the twisting and smoking wreckage. Firefighters quickly arrived, treating as many as 200 people at the scene. There were so many they had to use carts from a nearby Costco store to transport them. In fact, more than 100 were taken to local hospitals, many with critical injuries. At least 10 people were killed, including a sheriff's deputy.
Words can't describe, when you look into the wreckage of those cars, the terrible violence that would have been done to people who were inside those cars.
Police describe the suspect, Juan Manuel Alvarez, as deranged. They say he stabbed himself and tried to slash his wrists. Now he will be charged with murder. Carla Bowl, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Next on 13 News.
Millions of dollars may soon be earmarked for a massive overhaul in the tsunami warning system right here in the U.S. But see why the new system may still not be enough.
And this bumper sticker didn't get the owner of the truck in trouble, but a police officer instead. See why it was the officer who had some apologizing to do.
Closed captioning of 13 News is sponsored by Dodge. Grab life by the horns. Dodge.
Our check of news across America tonight begins with the arrest of 2 special education students in Florida.
The boys, ages 9 and 10, were cuffed and hauled in after a classmate said that they drew threatening pictures. The school says that the boys created several depictions in which 2 stick figures are stabbing and hanging another person. The boys' parents are upset, saying that this is a school matter, not a police investigation. Police disagree. The boys are charged with felony threats.
And here's what New England doesn't need: more snow. Parts of Massachusetts could see as much as 10 inches of snow today and tonight. On top of that, 2 to 3 feet of snow they got over the weekend. The city of Boston has already exhausted its snow budget for the winter. We're learning a lot more about the massive drug bust involving a former Norfolk principal.
David Allen and the 13 News team are standing by with that story and more right now on 13 News at 5:30.
A big local story at 5:30 is the 13 News investigation into that huge drug bust we told you about last night.